let's talk about actually implementing zero trust, because now we've learned that it's a framework. So how do we actually do this? Well, there's a few ways. So one of the ways to help you implement zero trust is next generation firewalls. These improve security. They're more advanced than the traditional firewall that just lets things in or out based on rules. They can use threat intelligence. I love it when I can talk about threat intelligence. That is going to be timely information on current threats that are out there. They also provide intrusion protection systems, which tell you which prevent intrusion from unknown types of threats, right? They do deep packet inspection, encrypted packet inspection, which means not just letting packets through based on an IP or a domain, but actually taking apart and looking at what's in the inside. They allow you to apply granular application controls, like what applications within my environment are allowed to go out, what applications outside my environment are allowed to come in. And they provide, because they're more complicated than a traditional firewall with IP list, block and allow IP list, they do provide centralized management consoles for ease of management. And Chuck, feel free to break in anytime. You know me. I'll zip it, let you say stuff.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So what's another way? Encryption. Why? Because encryption actually minimizes the impact of a cyber breach. Why? Because data is not easily readable. Now, am I talking like 8-bit encryption? No. I am talking like high level encryption. If you think of tools like password managers, not only do they encrypt those vaults, they encrypt them multiple times. They do, there's articles everywhere about how they do them. So if you look at an article for 1Password, they'll explain in depth how they encrypt and rotate and re-encrypt the vaults so they're protected from prying eyes. So even if there was some kind of breach, then the data would not be easily readable, right? So encryption also enforces the principle of least privilege. So only those with the encryption key, those who have been authorized, can access the data or see it. And this is really a force multiplier when you use it in conjunction with multi-factor authentication. And not just that, but not only do we want to encrypt data when we're maybe sending an email, so we want to use commercial email and commercial solutions versus using my business at gmail.com or my business at yahoo.com. And we want to also encrypt the data at rest. So if some bad guy does get into our environment, that everything's not just sitting there as an open book for them to go through. Identity access management. This also helps us implement least privilege access. This allows us to have granular roles that not only based about who we are, but the context. Just because I'm the CEO doesn't mean I have to have access to all HR records. But there may be a time when I do need to have access to something in particular. And the idea is to only grant access when access is needed. It allows continuous identity verification. This again is zero trust. Never trust, always verify prior to access. And this is not just at the network perimeter. This is within the network, right? Strong authentication. We're going to talk about that in the coming slides, right? Because that is really important, and actually something that is quite simple in the grand scheme of things to implement, and something that really helps with your business processes rather than getting in the way, right? And then context-aware access controls. So I'm here in Tampa, Florida. So when I log into my ConnectWise resources from Tampa, Florida, all is good. But what if I'm logged in from Tampa, Florida, and someone tries to log in with my credentials from London, England within 15 minutes? Not possible to get to London, England. I don't have a transporter. If any of you has a transporter, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd like to talk to you a little more. But context aware, right? Or not even having it within 15 minutes, but maybe Natalie 90% of the time logs in from Tampa, but maybe I really am in London, England, and I log in from London, England. So it asks for additional factors of authentication to make sure it's really me. Okay, so let's talk about access, right? So little quiz question here. Feel free to use, what are we using? Chat? Is that what we're using? Chat or Q&A?
Yeah, everyone can pop it into the chat if they like. This is
Okay,
a really,
yeah,
really great question. I love
yeah.
this.
Yeah, so how long do you think it takes a hacker to crack an 8-character password? And we're talking an 8-character password that has all the things that you've been told you need to have. Upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters, like asterisks or hashtags, which used to be pound signs when I started, but now they're hashtags, those types of things. Go ahead, try your hand at this and guess how long you think. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. Um, don't make me sing the Jeopardy music to you. You really want to start guessing. You don't want to hear me sing. Come on, guys.
Yeah, folks, you can drop them into the chat if you like.
We have some shy people. I have more quiz questions, and
folks.
they do increase in difficulty.
They're going to get harder and harder as we go. I like it.
Exactly. Well, it's 5 minutes. Can you believe that? And I'm thinking with things like AI and quantum computing, it's not going to be long before it's 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yep.
Another thing which I strongly believe could be considered part of zero trust and part of your security is a password manager. It's the only way you're going to be able to create unique and strong passwords across everything you log into. And that is really important because remember when the Verizon report said most of the breaches were due to credentials? I'm going to give you an answer to this question. How do bad guys get those credentials? Well, I would bet money that you guys are and women, you men and women who are on this call, have people that you know. Hopefully not you because you're here and you're interested in security. But I would bet you have people at your business who use their business email and that same password they use for in accessing your business infrastructure to shop on Amazon, or worse, to shop on Temu or Shein or TikTok or Facebook. And those things get breached. Amazon's been breached. Facebook's been breached. ChatGPT's been breached. They've all been breached. And what happens when they're breached is those those credentials make their way to the dark web. And all a bad guy needs to buy those credentials is access to the dark web, which anyone can figure out with just do a quick Google search. I'm sure you don't even have to wait for the YouTube video. I'm sure an AI answer will pop right to the top, right?
Yeah.
Explain to you how to use a Tor browser, get to the dark web, and then you just need some cryptocurrency. You buy that list, and then these bad guys are using automated means. It's not like back in the old days when I was a kid, where it was some guy sitting in his mom's basement eating Twizzlers and drinking Mountain Dew, because I don't think we had energy drinks yet. And right, Mountain Dew was the energy drink of choice.
It was the energy drink, yeah.
Yeah, Mountain Dew was the energy drink. All that sugar and caffeine. Banging away on a keyboard. This is all automated. It's not hard to try, if I'm using your business email and my same password, it's going to be very easy for someone to tell what business I work at based on that domain name and then try to automatically break into that business. And again, a change from back in the dark ages when I had a dinosaur and email was only your email, right? Email is now access to every file anyone's ever shared with you and access to any file you've ever created, whether you're on Google Workspace or you are in Microsoft 365. So it really is important to protect that.
Yeah, I think it's the password thing too, just real quick now, as I remember we were having a conversation with a CFO from a company who swore up and down that, they didn't have any issues with any breaches because they all were using strong passwords, and the CFO's credentials popped up as #1 on the list when we ran dark web scan. Oops. And it was because reusing the same password but just changing maybe one character.
Yeah.
And with the tools like you were saying with AI, I mean, they can quickly go through those
You
lists
actually quickly
and
iterate through that.
yep,
I
yep,
mean, they're on to us.
yep,
When you're required to change your password every 90 days, what do? You add another number, you
yep,
change a number, you add one character. It's
yep,
much better to use a password manager. And that's one of those things that really helps save time, which saves money with the business,
yeah,
because password managers can help you quickly and easily change and record passwords for every
yep,
site. I know we talked about this before, but I don't think I have one password that is less than 20, 22,
yeah,
24 characters.
yep.
You know, so it's really
Important
important.
call
And
out.
then,
Yep.
yeah, and in combination with passwords, multi-factor authentication. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, multi-factor authentication is probably going to cost you an extra 30 seconds. But as a business leader or a business owner, you need to weigh the risk. Is the risk worth it not to use multi-factor authentication? Me personally, the risk is not worth it. I do not want a bad guy getting access to my bank account, to my retirement, um, to personal information on my computer about my kids or my grandkids. I don't want that to happen. So I use multi-factor authentication everywhere I can. And if you've been on some of these other webinars, I think we went through that phishing as a service attack, which actually does defeat multi-factor authentication, but it defeats bad multi-factor authentication, right? And that would be on this list here, there are 4 different authentication types. We talk about multi-factor authentication, with the top one being the strongest, which cannot be defeated because this includes something that you have on you. So I have on me a security key, or I have on me my fingerprint or my retina scan, or, I have something physical on me, kind of like a
Yep.
pass key instead of a password. It also includes a combination of the device that you have on you, right? App-based authentication is vulnerable to phishing attacks. It is a little better than app-based without numbers, but the absolute worst is SMS and voice. And I want you to notice on here, so you'll see something called SS7, and SS7 is a protocol that all of the cyber carriers use. Every single device and network, whether you're on T-Mobile or Cricket or Verizon or AT&T, is vulnerable to this. So SMS and voice, if someone is targeting you, they're going to defeat that very easily. Or it could just be, you could just be a crime of opportunity, a target of opportunity
Yeah.
as
Yep.
well. Now, the very hard question. This is really, I'm going to be super disappointed if I have no fellow nerds on this call. Okay. Because I need to know what form, and this is not a one, he used multiple forms. What form of MFA, and if you get even one right, I'll give you a gold star. What form of MFA did Tony Stark use for Jarvis? Do you
Everybody,
know
you
this,
can
Chuck?
pop this into the chat. Pop this into the chat if you have some answers.
Come on. I'm going to start calling out names because I know some of you all that are on this call. They'll never come to a webinar again. I wouldn't do that. Well, let me give you a hint. It's not B, but I will tell you that B is the form of multi-factor authentication that I use, and it is the
Mm,
strongest form of multi-factor authentication. Thank you for answering.
yep, there we
Yes, you are
go. Yep.
correct. That is one of the forms that he used. So he uses a sophisticated multi-factor authentication system. He does voice recognition. But oh, by the way, how long a sample of your voice does AI need to be you?
Well, that's a good question.
3.
Wow.
Now, of course, the longer the sample, the more accurate the voice duplication will be, but it's been proven that AI only needs 3 seconds to duplicate your voice. Biometric scans, so facial recognition, retinal scans, we use, we're there now. We use facial recognition on your phone. I've worked in places where they have done retinal scans, believe it or not. Gesture-based commands. I think we're a little far from gesture-based commands. What was that Minority Report too?
Mm,
Right. And this means that Tony is the only one who can access Jarvis. Now, in the real world, of course, I use a Face ID on my phone, but I also use a YubiKey, and a YubiKey can be used on my mobile devices as well as on my computers. And I use that everywhere that I can. So Also, I want to make sure you're aware that this is not just in the movies, but you can use more than one form of multi-factor authentication. Now, depending on what kind of business you are, and what your role is, you may use more than one form of multi-factor authentication, right? Like I started my career in the Department of Defense, and we had access cards. Um, we had actually an access card to get into the building, an access card to get into the system, and then of course a password. So we use multiple. We use in that case we're using three types of authentication to get to the systems, right? Um, you can do now pass keys on your phone. That you physically have the phone. Those are not susceptible to these phishing as a service attacks that we're seeing. And you can use your biometric data. It's not like in the movies, in those scary movies where they cut some guy's finger off and then use it. To my knowledge, that is not happening. And if it is, I don't want to know about it. And, if you have some really important data, like if you are dealing with high dollar financial transactions, you may want to consider more than one factor. It's all about cybersecurity is always about your risk tolerance, right? Can I mitigate a threat? Can I mitigate a risk? Can I accept the risk? Or can I share responsibility, right? You're never going to be able to shift all of the risk to someone else. That just doesn't work in practice. It's sharing the responsibility of the risk, right? So what else do we have here? Okay, remember I said it's monitoring. So in order to have a true zero trust environment, you do have to have tools that monitor and examine logs, things like an endpoint detection and response system, right? That detects and monitors information happening on your workstation or laptop. Like I'm working off a laptop right now. I have endpoint detection and response on my system. So if I click on something I shouldn't click on and something starts to encrypt, it can actually disconnect me from the network and even roll back to a known good state, right? It can detect if I open a file attachment and that file attachment is a PDF and that PDF tries to launch a process. It knows things like, hey, wait a minute, I understand behaviors. And the behavior of a PDF document is just to sit there and wait till you print it or read it or whatever, not to launch processes, right? A security operations center. These are those trained security analysts and engineers and professionals who know what they're looking at, even beyond what tools like an endpoint detection and response or a security information and event management system can catch. They can detect trends and patterns that people like you and I may not necessarily see, right? Now, why would I want logs from both an EDR, an endpoint detection and response, and a security information and event management system? Well, because the endpoint concentrates on endpoints on specific computers, where security information and event management system has the capability of inspecting packets, intrusion detection services, as well as looking at those logs and detecting anomalous behavior, correlating information that's happening from the time someone gets into your environment to the time and the exact steps they took to take stuff out. Like a SIM could detect something like someone trying to access Dropbox when they're not authorized to, and, exfiltrating a bunch of data. Now, it could be someone exfiltrating data because they're a bad guy, or it could just be Bob in accounting who's running behind on his projects again and is trying to get some work done at home. But if you're letting Bob from accounting download all your financials onto his home computer, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah,
that is a huge issue. I don't think I see anyone named Bob on this call, so I'll apologize. If you know a Bob, it's not him. Okay, it's a different Bob I'm talking about, right? So we have to have the ability to monitor. And then last but not least, what are the benefits of zero trust? This leverages defense in depth strategies. What do I mean by that? There is no one of these strategies alone that is going to cover you from all bases. If anyone ever tells you, hey, I've got this great strategy, this all-in-one thing that's just going to take care of everything cyber and you never have to worry again, and I am exaggerating a lot, but I've heard some pretty outrageous claims, you need to turn and run the other way, right? Defense in depth means we do things like we do physical security, like I talked about, like, we want to know if if our systems are hosted somewhere else that, they're controlling physical access to those servers. We want to know that we're covering security awareness training, so our staff knows not to click on emails that say, oh my gosh, your password and username have been compromised and you need to click here and change your Microsoft credentials right now because that's a scam, right? We need to know, our employees need to know, hey, maybe I clicked on that email because I was in a rush and not because I didn't know any better, right? And I need to know who to report that to, right? We need to have processes in place like a disaster recovery plan, an incident response plan, a responsible use, like what kind of devices can I use on the company network? Should I be exfiltrating things to my cell phone? Should I be using my personal cell phone? You need to have, it gives you effective access control to systems and data. It's a borderless strategy. It doesn't matter if the information's inside or outside your environment. It improves your insight. It's going to minimize risk and damage, because the sooner you can detect that something that shouldn't have happened has happened and you can end it, the less damage you will have, right? It's going to enhance your user experience, right? Because users will be able to seamlessly, through different technologies, you can seamlessly change your authorization levels. You can seamlessly get access to things that you only need access to once in a while, like maybe HR records or business financials or something like that. And most importantly, it's going to allow you not just to protect your business and your reputation, but to protect your clients, right? Because we talk about third-party risk a lot, and I'm sure your clients have heard about it too, because they're going to want to know, what is the differentiator of doing business with you, right? Do you care about security? Are you caring when you handle my stuff that it is secure and that I'm not going to have to worry about a breach because you're not implementing the right controls, right? And really, reputation and preventing financial loss, because what these bad guys are trying to do, they don't care about your reputation. They're not necessarily trying to ruin your reputation. There's a very small percentage of cyber crimes that have to do with ruining your reputation. Most cyber crimes, they're financially motivated. Now, does it ruin your reputation if you are a hit? Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And I want to tell you, in today's landscape, it really is a matter of when, not if, because think of it this way. The bad guy only has to get it right one time. We have to get it right every time. That's why we want to deploy multiple strategies that include people, process, and tech, not just technology, right? And just a word of advice, if you do have an incident or a breach, and be very careful in using those terms, those are both legal terms, understand what you're talking about there. Be transparent. No, you don't have to share every little nitnoid detail, but be transparent, because if you're transparent and you do the right thing, I can list off many companies that have been transparent and have been fine, and many companies that have not been transparent and have had a huge hit or if even gone out of business. But the most important thing is to be honest. Honesty really is the best policy. Your mom was right.